Hey guys, do you know what's worse than reading a comic book that doesn't make any sense? Reading a comic book that doesn't make any sense and is painfully boring. Say what you will about the Cyber Kitties, and trust me, there's a lot to be said about those comics, but you can't say that they were ever boring. These comics are absolutely insane, and you're compelled to read them just to see what bizarre turn they'll take next. Then you have the topic of today's review, Comics Greatest World X. This was a short-lived anthology series published by Dark Horse in 1993, and instead of focusing on the creation of a single character and making up a world around him, they instead tried to establish the world and have it expressed through the eyes of a handful of different characters. Not entirely sure what the point of that was, since Dark Horse already published Sin City a few years prior. Speaking of, this cover, drawn by Sin City creator Frank Miller, is pretty cool. It features our title character, simply named X, falling dramatically from somewhere to somewhere else. Sure, it's a blatant ripoff of the cover for The Dark Knight Returns, but if copy something you must, at least it makes sense to copy one of the most influential comics of all time. And to be honest, I'd rather see Frank Miller rip off his better material than the crap he would eventually fall into. Our comic opens in a sepia-toned 1931, where a flying saucer gets lost while looking for an Ed Wood movie to star in. The object traverses the North American continent in a matter of seconds, and a journey that began countless light years away ends over a remote section of the Nevada desert. My god, I knew it! It was aliens that started Burning Man! The saucer finds a spot to bury itself in. Then we jump to 60 years later, where a crazy person thinks he's a superhero and plummets to his death when he tries to fly. Or maybe he just got thrown out the window by Ozymandias. What does this have to do with the flying saucer from that last page?
Nothing! Absolutely nothing!
Now, Arcadia, a city friendly to business, profitable business, legal and otherwise. There is a way of doing business in Arcadia, a way that keeps the machinery running smoothly. The machine has run very smoothly until tonight. Senatorial candidate Larry Briggs discovered that the machine can break down, with lethal results. A masked man shows Briggs just how delicate the machine really was. He made the machine print anyway, regardless of its dangerously low cyan levels! We see that this X guy has just murdered Briggs. Since it's never established what business he was trying to stop, we have no idea if X is supposed to be an assassin who's trying to keep the underworld fully operational, or if he's an anti-hero who simply employs lethal methods. He crashes into a lower floor to escape security, where he strikes an awesome, badass pose in the unfulfilled hopes that someone will see him and think he's awesome and a badass. He's been in situations like this before. No problem. Thanks for keeping us in the know, narration box. It's not like we could have had word balloons or internal monologue to tell us that. And check it out. He crashes through this window where we can clearly see his cape flapping behind him, and it somehow ends up under his feet when he lands. Clearly, he murdered Briggs using his demonic cape powers. He escapes through an elevator shaft and into the sewers before any of the cops can catch him. Some SWAT guys show up to tell the detective that they're taking care of things now. Then, for no reason whatsoever, X bursts out of the sewer so we can have a fight scene. Okay, granted, we do want to see a little action beyond X just running away, but this is completely pointless. There is literally no reason for him to do this when he was already scot-free. Wait a minute. Pointlessly fighting the police? Frank Miller? He's Crazy Steve from All-Star Batman and Robin! He ducks into an alley when the SWAT team remembers that, they have guns, where he doesn't notice the materialization of these guys who look like the goons from Highlander 2. They worship Septenarius, the divine 7-in-1, who is represented by a rotary telephone dial. And I hope I really didn't just date myself by knowing what a rotary telephone is. They're tracking the signal of the Fallen One. Good God, please don't let this be a tie-in with Transformers 2. But we then jump back to the SWAT guys before we get a chance to learn who the Fallen One is. Luckily for them, they're in some kind of existential flux so that they're still here, but the police can't see them. Good thing, too. If the cops could see them, the sheer amount of laughter from looking at these guys would be lethal. The detective calls back to headquarters, informing the lieutenant that it's time to take the dogs for a walk. They need to have some private time so they don't piddle on the carpet. Continued next week in Comics Greatest World, Pit Bulls. Oh, that's just wonderful. The comic flat out admits that following this X person is kind of pointless, so instead of continuing with X number 2, let's switch focus to a special ops team whose defining characteristic is that they all carry a lot of guns. Comics Greatest World, starring comics' least interesting characters. And so that was Comics Greatest World X, and there is nothing great about it. Let's recap. This comic starts off with a flying saucer that comes to Earth for reasons we don't know, then it focuses on a guy we don't know who kills another guy we don't know. His motivation for killing him, we don't know, and now he's being chased by a detective who I think has some kind of history with him, except we don't know it. He has an issue with the SWAT team, because we don't know, then these guys show up also because we don't know. And because there's nothing happening that we do know, the comic just gives up on itself and decides to start things fresh in a completely different comic and focusing on a completely different set of characters. But just because this comic doesn't know what to do with itself, that doesn't mean that I don't know what to do with it.
Brand X, it's simple and plain. Brand X, it's different but all the same. Brand X, it's simple and plain. Brand X, it's different but all the same. Brand X, it's simple and plain. Brand X, it's different but all the same. Brand X, it's simple and plain. Brand X, it's different but all the same. Brand X, it's simple and plain. Brand X, it's different but all the same. Brand X, it's simple and plain. Brand X, it's different but all the same.
Subscribe.